Welcome to the Registered Investment Advisor Podcast, where financial services marketing expert Seth Green interviews experts, executives, and top producers to share can't-miss tips on how they successfully manage their financial service firms, grow their businesses, create great relationships, and influence the industry. And now, here's your host, Seth Green.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Green. Today, I've got the good fortune to be with Jonathan Freeman, Chief Operating Officer and Chief Compliance Officer for Centura Wealth. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth, for having me. Great to be here.
We are happy to have you. Let's go back in time a little bit because you've got a diverse background. You've been in a whole bunch of different industries before landing in the wonderful RIA world. Take us back a little bit in time. How'd you get started in general? And then how'd you get started in the business?
Well, in general, that's an interesting story, but I started out on a path where I wanted to try and make the world a better place. I was an environmental major and wanted to improve our living and working world. So got into that, but found out it was a very politically driven industry, as well as all very cyclical as it relates to overall boom and bust cycles in real estate. So after finding my first layoff during a recession, I decided I wanted to go back to business school and diversify myself. And I went to UCLA, got an MBA, and came out during the dot boom era, which many of these listeners may or may not recall, but it was another boom bust cycle. And got a great experience by working at Intel, really what I think is the foundation of the DNA of who I am. And later moved into a bunch of startups. So my kind of focus is helping companies scale. And so that here at Centura is what we're doing. I joined, I first met the partners here as a client back when I was working through some tax opportunities or tax mitigation opportunities, and stayed in touch and eventually recircled back in 2018 when they were registering with the SEC and they needed someone to help scale up operations. And so we got to talking, found like it would be an exciting challenge, which is what I thrive in. And so joined up and we launched Centura Wealth. Now we're close to 800 million in assets, trying to 10x the firm over 5 years and well along our way, and excited to continue to see the progress.
Well, congratulations on that. I'm sure the longer version of that journey could probably fit in a book somewhere.
It might.
If it hasn't already. So talk about the transition between life before Centura and life, now, because you switched industries into our industry. So talk a little bit, that's an interesting transition. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So, I was a CFO, worked in corporate, Fortune 50 company down to startup. So understanding finance at its core, as well as the markets, was something that I was not unfamiliar with. But in terms of, I'll call it both wealth management, but more specifically financial planning, that was something that I hadn't had direct exposure to, but was certainly both by living through it personally and also just getting through the I'll call it the high level of what you study in finance and business school. It felt natural, and that was my biggest reservation going into it, as I was more of an operational person focusing on scaling businesses. Did I want to get back into a financial services and number crunching kind of firm? And after a short period of time, I felt it was a great natural fit, and it was just an exciting opportunity to help build a culture, a company, and go after market opportunity that was really untapped. And so that's what drives me is really kind of helping build and scale. And that's what we're doing here at Centura. And it's something where obviously we're analytical minds in who we are and how we think, but at the same time, it's doing right for the client and helping them achieve their goals, and the satisfaction that you get in seeing them to ultimately get to some place that they didn't think was achievable. And that's what we do every day. So that's exciting. And it really builds, a desire to do good in the world, not just, how we impact our clients, but how we give back into our communities and also our philanthropically inclined as well.
It's interesting because your role has expanded. Obviously, now you're both Chief Compliance Officer and Chief Operations Officer. Talk about the start of the journey and the added responsibility and how and why you took that on.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I willingly jumped into the compliance world on purpose. It was something where it was more opportunistic, I guess, within the company, a need that needed to be served. And so having worked at a Fortune 50 publicly traded company, dealing with all the compliance matters that, you deal with, Sarbanes-Oxley and audits and all that nature, it was pretty natural, I guess. But it is part and parcel with being a SEC registered company. And ultimately, the job is to keep us out of trouble and do what we say. And so it's not just those roles that I serve today. I also oversee marketing and finance and also our inorganic growth strategy. So all of our advisor tuck-ins is part of my responsibilities as well. And so that's, never a dull moment. I guess I'm ADD when it comes to having a lot of things on my plate and wanting a diverse work day. But at the same time, I recognize that I'm spread pretty thin, and part of our growth strategy is supplementing my team so that we can continue to add great, strong candidates within the organization and help us reach that kind of multi-billion-dollar mark, which is in our 5-year plan.
Well, so you wear both hats, both operations and compliance, and usually those are done by two different people. How does that work on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I've got a strong team. That definitely helps. And, ultimately, you have to focus and put everything in the right bucket, right? So on the compliance side, having processes and systems in place in order to manage the business on a day-to-day and then deal with the exceptions as they come. And then operationally on that side of the fence, I've got a lot of, I'll call it sub team members that are focused on different aspects of the business. But at the end of the day, I'm chartered to do both. There is a lot of overlap, right? So in the operations side, where we're working on billing and reporting our clients' assets, that, the same hat I wear constantly in terms of making sure we don't overbill our clients, or our, billing policies are correct and accurate. So there's tremendous amount of synergy between those two, but you do have to make sure you know which hat you're wearing on any given day, and you're not letting any balls drop.
Absolutely. As the firm has grown over the last handful of years, talk a little bit about the team that you've built. How many folks are on it at the moment? What are their different types of roles?
Yeah. So, we've been doubling every year, and mostly on the asset side. Hopefully our people growth doesn't line on the same slope as our people and assets aren't on the same slope. But our biggest limiter to growth has been finding well-talented people. We have a very laser point focused on serving ultra high net worth. And in that segment, in many cases, we find we have to teach people and sometimes retrain people on how we call it the Centura way is, and how we think is the right, I'll call it service delivering. So finding people that are intellectually curious, that have a desire to learn and grow, every day, and are adaptable. All those traits are critical to being successful here, as well as us continuing to adapt and grow in the marketplace. And so as we've been growing, it's, setting a very high growth target and hiring ahead of the need. That's the big thing. Most firms are reactive when it comes to hiring. They've got a problem, then they try and bring people in to solve it. We've been basically hiring people ahead of the curve. And that's a testament to the founders, and why I'm here is having a COO when you're 100 million in terms of asset base, and that RIA, most companies don't have a COO. And so that was, I guess, forward thinking. And my partners always challenge me of, okay, who's your replacement? What's your succession plan? And how are you continuing to help us achieve our goals? So that's something that we think about constantly. But at the same time, we've got a large array of skill sets within the company. We've got a dedicated planning department that are just CFPs, planners, and focus on financial planning activities. We have an investment department that's just focused on assets and, selecting private alternatives. We even have an insurance department that focuses on identifying and finding great insurance-based solutions for ultra high net worth. So in each aspect of the business, there's unique skill sets, but then that common thread that's required across all in terms of that cultural DNA that we're looking to continue to build and support as we grow.
You mentioned the ultra high net worth client multiple times. Who is an ideal client for Centura?
So we have three ideal client profiles. Sometimes it's all in one, but typically our ideal client profile will look something like this. They have an income of north of $1 million. So when you're in a high tax state like us, you're making that kind of money, you're probably having an annual tax bill somewhere between $400,000 and $500,000. And our common first introductory meeting will likely say that in our first year of doing business, we can eliminate, defer, and mitigate that somewhere between 20 to 80%. And so if you're a high income producer, hearing that you're going to be able to save $20,000 to $50,000 in taxes in the first 6 months, that's pretty substantial.
Absolutely. And that'll just give them one heck of an ROI, because the best ROI, we've always said, the best ROI you're ever going to get is cutting dollars off your tax bill.
Absolutely. So the second profile is someone that's going through what our industry might call money in motion event. So it's a death, divorce, sale of their business, or sale of real estate. Those 4 Ds are typically where you have another taxable problem that comes up. And we like to say, if you are introduced and meet Centura advisors sometime in the 12 to 18 month period before that, sometimes you don't have a choice, you're able to, again, have that maximum impact on keeping I'll call it your estate within your pocket versus the government's. And then the third profile are large estates. Those are typically over 24 million if you're married, or 12 million if you're single. In those cases, we focus on the 3 estate tax issues, which are estate, gift, and gift generation skipping taxes. In those 3 cases, it's more about getting the dollars to your family and those that you want versus, again, paying it out in wealth transfer tax.
And obviously, that's an ultra competitive market. Everybody, who's set up to serve their unique needs would love to have those folks as a client. How do they find you? How does Centura bring them on board? How are you getting in front of them?
Yeah. So if you look at our organic growth, 70% of our new business comes from professionals that know who we are. And so we have a very focused program. We call it a COI networking program that's all about finding our network's ideal client. We share with them who our ideal client is, and we meet with them twice a year, showing who's the referrals that we've provided to you. Here's the ones that you've provided to us, and making sure that we're giving you your ideal client and vice versa. So that has been a very, I'll call it, virtuous cycle, and something that we focus on. But at the end of the day, it's all about delivering value. And so we tell our prospects and our people we're introduced to, if we don't deliver exponential value, we're not the right firm for you. And as we start to get through our planning process, we call it the liberated wealth process. As we get through that, at any point along the way, if you don't think we're delivering exponential value, would certainly part as friends and allow you to take your business elsewhere. But at the end of the day, everything is focused on, driving alpha on planning, driving alpha in investments, and also getting them to where they want to in life. We call that's their journey or their North Star. And ultimately, we think by focusing on these areas of tax planning and driving value early in the relationship, that cements a client, for life. And we've seen that time and time again, where we can have a very substantial impact in the first 6 to 12 months.
You talked about alpha in a bunch of different areas. On the investment side, are you managing the investments in-house? And if so, talk a little bit about that process. And if you're using SMAs or other third-party money managers, talk a little bit about how you vet those relationships, whichever one is applicable.
Yeah. So in our world of view on the asset management side, we have core portfolios, which again are trying to achieve cheap beta in a diversified approach. And I think, they stand on their own in terms of hitting their relative benchmarks, but we spend 90+% of our time focusing on sourcing private alternatives that are not I'll call it common broker dealer or common capital type product. They're truly direct to the source, the sponsor, where we've gone through our own internal due diligence process and really sourced a unique product. And in many cases, there's specific, I'll call it, terms and conditions for our clients that are, I'll call it a cut above the rest. And so that's where we think in today's markets, it used to be that everyone would have to go to a wirehouse to get pre-IPO stock. Well, guess what? That's no longer the case. The private equity markets are where all the new generation and new origination goes first. And ultimately, that's where you want to get access to in terms of creating higher than market returns or risk adjusted returns. So that's where we focus and spend a lot of time. We have an internal department, but also rely on some outside consultants to help us through the process in terms of due diligence. But ultimately, it's a matter of creating that kind of unique portfolio for each of the major 5 asset classes within alts. And then finally, on the, kind of tax overall wrapper, right? It's managing the portfolio once it's there to ensure that you've got the right assets in terms of both tax efficiency and tax structure, and that the ultimate you're helping achieve the client's risk profile in what their overall growth is looking for.
You and the firm have both grown so much. What's your biggest challenge now?
Again, I think it goes back to people, hunting in this market for the right people. Often if they don't get an offer when they first walk in the door, they don't even want to carry on the conversation. But knowing that we have a very, I'll call it, detailed process in how we vet good talent. And if they walk away, that's actually A-okay, because we know they're not going to be a long-term good fit for us. And so for us, it's a matter of, putting together a cultural fit, putting together an opportunity that puts them on the right seat on the bus, and ultimately wanting a group of individuals that enjoy working together and want to continue to grow as we, go after this blue ocean of opportunity. You might say it's competitive, but we think there's a huge opportunity of bringing these, our recipe to the table for these type of clients.
Absolutely. Your passion is obvious. What do you like best about what you're doing?
It's really the fun in actually solving problems. Every day is a new one, and it's a great team. We often ask people, what's the best team you've ever been on, to figure out where they set the bar. And for us, I think this is the best team I've ever worked with. And we have, not only fun helping serve our clients, but having fun outside the office. And whether it's our annual golfing extravaganza or some of our quarterly events, it's a great place to work. And obviously feeding our number one asset, which is our people, is a big part of my challenge as well. And so never have a dull day, and always love coming into the office and, tackling another mountain.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a great job of that. We know your time's incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. For our viewers or listeners who are watching, listening, want to learn more about you and all things Centura, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, well, I'll give you 2 resources. One is our main website. That's CenturaWealth.com, CENTURA wealth.com. And for those other advisors that are out there, knowledge seekers and learning, trying to get better, sharpen the saw, as we like to call it, we've actually built a learning center out there, a free resource for everyone. It's called learn.centurawealth.com. And we provide, with full open access, some of our strategies, approaches, techniques for others to share. And if there's intrigue and interest and wanting to learn more, happy to set up a direct video or web call to explain that in more detail. But either of those resources, or if you want to email me direct, is just jfreeman, Freeman @centurawealth.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody watching or listening. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time. Jonathan, thanks again for your time.
Seth, appreciate it. It's been great, and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks, everybody.